Well, here's a great example for you.
Okay.
I've led several men's mysteries.
Okay.
Both at large pagan events like Dragonfest, also at Beltania, and have tried to pass on the concept of a men's mystery to anyone who would actually hear me, right, and kind of take up the charge and do it themselves. And recently, a young student actually in my own coven and I were kind of looking at a site, and we were trying to figure out, okay, this is how traffic's going to move, and this is how the mystery is going to unfold for the celebrants. And there was one part where we had to actually ford a little creek, and so one of the other leaders took off his clothes and he forded the creek, and then he had the concept, oh, wait a minute, maybe we could do this skyclad. How do you think that would go? And my student had his daughter there. Now, we're talking about a sacred ceremony, but this neo-pagan and magical practitioner wouldn't allow his daughter to come across into that grove until the other leader put something around to cover up his genitalia. This concept of nude equals lewd is so completely saturated in all of our consciousnesses that even within the context of a sacred rite, it was disallowed.
I don't think it's just nude equals lewd. Tony and I were at the mall, and there was a little girl, and she was crying, and there was no parents around, and Tony said, I will go, and I said, you absolutely will not go anywhere near that child, because if you are a man, and there is a girl involved, and you're automatically a pervert. Yeah. And I think that is another thing that we in the pagan community have to be hyper aware of, because we're already considered crazy, perverty, orgiasts in a way, and it makes me sad. But it makes me really sad, because again, we're talking about a sacred ceremony, and I'm quite sure that your student would never let his daughter anywhere near anything that would be harmful to her or, hurtful. I mean, he sounds like a good parent, but it's sad that he has to sit back and say, if somebody else knows that I let this happen, could I lose my kid?
Well, I know there are people who are divorced and who have shared custody issues who cannot let minor-aged children in a situation where there's nudity, even if it's a nudist camp or something fairly above board like that. They just can't take the risk because of that situation.
Years ago, Tony worked Freedom Circle as a fire tender at D-Fest. And Dragonfest. At Dragonfest. And, they're very clear, you can't be under 18 at Freedom Circle because it's all nude and there's alcohol. Right. And he had a German couple, I believe, came up and were like, we want to come. And they have a 5-year-old. And he's like, I'm very sorry, we can't do this. And they got very upset. Yeah. We go all over the world, and this isn't a problem. It's like, this is a problem
all over Europe.
In this community, in this place.
Yes.
And we absolutely cannot stand to have a scandal around Dragonfest, especially over nothing. Nothing would happen. But all it takes is one person to say it did.
Right.
And you've ruined the festival, you've ruined the community, all with one bad accusation.
How about other non-traditional sexual practices like bisexuality and polyamory? What would you guys like to say about some of those things?
Well, I'm cultivating a polyamorous relationship myself. I'm married, of course, to Jade. And cultivating a male-male relationship in Baltimore, so long distance as well. I'll say this much: you think one relationship is hard work, multiple relationships is harder,
and one's long distance.
I had this discussion earlier with both of you. Actually, this same topic came up many years ago. My first husband decided that he wanted an open marriage. So this was in the late 1970s, early 1980s. And I said to him, being the Aquarian I am, we tend to be experimental and free thinkers and stuff. I said, I'm not opposed to the idea. I'm just not sure it would work well. I'm not sure that emotionally, I could handle it. I think I might, feel rejected or ignored or second best, yeah. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll hang with you if any of those feelings come up. We'll work on them, you know. And he was good to his word, and he did that. He supported me emotionally through all of that. And what I found out was kind of interesting. I found out that if I felt jealous, it actually had more to do with my insecurities than it did to do with anything he was doing, because he was being very careful and honorable about how he was doing it. So there was a whole group of people, an organization called Beyond Monogamy, and I became the editor of their newsletter, and it was people who were exploring all this polyamory stuff back then. And I noticed that many of the same things go on now as did back then, that a lot of people who want to be sexually explorative or adventurous, or who are afraid of commitment, who want their cake and eat it, as it were, become polyamorous and really haven't thought about how much work it takes. If we think about how much work it can take in one relationship with another human being, if there are difficulties and challenges going on, then multiply that exponentially by every other person that becomes involved in the relationship.
And every person they're involved with.
Exactly. Yeah.
You just get bigger and bigger.
Right.
I mean,
so it's not that I think it's a bad thing. I think to do it right takes a lot of work. And honesty and good communication.
And the focus shouldn't really be on the problems, right? I mean, the focus should be on what is in excess in my life that I have to share with you, and with you, and with you.
Well, you're really talking about love,
Yes,
and a lot of people are talking about sex.
That's the thing. I don't really like the term sexual preference or sexual orientation, because most people, if forced to, could have sex with anybody.
Yeah.
They can have sex, but sex, especially in our society, is not the same thing as love. These can be two very divorced things. So I don't really have, I guess I do prefer men more, but that doesn't mean that I couldn't or wouldn't or haven't had sexual experiences with women. I don't say that I'm bisexual. I would never say that I was a lesbian, because I don't think that I could be in a relationship, a loving partner relationship with a woman. I've never found a woman that I was in love with. So I don't know if I have that ability. And I think it's very dishonest of me if I go out and meet a woman to present myself as bisexual and give that person the idea that this could be more than sex. This is going to maybe be a relationship. This is maybe going to be a polyamorous relationship, when really it could be or maybe just about the sexual experience. I don't think there's anything wrong saying, I really click with you on a sexual level, and we have that kind of intimacy, but when we're outside the bedroom, I want to kill you.